Okay. Today we're talking about the Korean War. Again, you will find it in under your classroom. All you have to do is the Korean War. There's a whole packet there. You just do Korean War. Scroll down to the very end. Find the 10 questions that matches the reading of today. Well, you might not have to go to the very end. I think it's right underneath it. Anyway, you'll find it. Okay. All right, here we go. Again, I don't care. It's online. I don't care if you get to answer a question in class or not at this point in time. Okay, I know that sounds harsh, but that's just the way it is. If you want to come to class and talk during the entire class, I'm going to let you. And then you can do this on your own. It's entirely up to you. But it's due tomorrow. Do it in class. Don't do it. Do it at home. I'm grading. And it's due tomorrow. Either way, doesn't matter. Okay? You make 100, I'll be happy to put 100 in for you. If you don't do it, you have to put that big old fat 0 in. Okay, there's no skin off my nose either way. I passed 6th grade.
This is enough points.
Okay? All right. The Korean War was fought between South Korea and communist North Korea. Remember what led us to this point.
What's communist mean?
After World War II,
Seriously, I don't know.
son, if you don't quit interrupting me, you're never going to find out.
Communist means you're
Okay.
just don't. Stop.
What led to this was Russia took over the northern part, the Allies took over the southern part, and the understanding that there would be an election countrywide and they would pick their own leaders. And then Russia said, no, we're going to hold on to our half. And Russia was communist. Okay? Communist means that you have basically a dictator that runs the government. Okay? And he's it. He's dictator for life. Okay? There is no more elections. Okay? All right. It was the first major conflict of the Cold War as the Soviet Union supported North Korea and the United States supported South Korea. Okay, the Soviet Union is Russia. The war ended with little resolution. Okay, the countries are still divided today, and North Korea is still ruled by communists. Okay, still at the 38th parallel. That's where it was split. That's where there is a massive fence that separates the country.
Wait, so
Okay.
did I control ever North Korea?
The what?
So the Soviet
The Soviet Union. Well, China, the Soviet Union kind of backs them. They kind of do their own thing now.
Yeah.
China is probably closer to backing them now than Russia is at this point in time. But China is also communist. So, all right. The dates was from June 25th, 1950 to July 27th, 1953. So as you can see, it was only a little over a 3-year war. Okay, compared to some that goes on forever. Only 3 years. And some of the guys who fought in this war was actually there for the durations for some parts. Okay, because they did not have the rotating thing like they do today. Okay. The leaders and prime ministers in North Korea was, hey, guess who? Okay, that's the great granddaddy. Okay. And it's like dictators. It runs in the family or something. They won't give it up. Okay. It's kind of like royalty. Okay. And his commander in chief was Cho Yong-kong. Okay. The president of South Korea was Syngman Rhee, who later on, he was an interesting character too. We'll talk about him a little bit. The South Korean army was led by Chung Il-kun. I know I have a hard time with the Korean name. The United States Army and the United Nations forces were led by General Douglas MacArthur. And the U.S. president at the start of the war was Harry Truman. Later, it becomes Dwight Eisenhower, okay, by the end of the war. Countries that were involved was North Korea, was the Soviet Union, okay, supporting North Korea was Soviet Union, and the People's Republic of China. Supporting South Korea was the United States, Great Britain, and the United Nations, okay? In fact, we'll talk about a little later on, we went in under the flag of the United Nations, not under American troops. I mean, it was American troops, but it was not, America was fighting this war. It was, we were supporting the United Nations because we did not want to get into World War III in 1950. It was that simple.
Immediately after.
Okay, it was that simple. All right, this kind of shows you where Korea, you can see it's actually connected to China. It's a peninsula off of China.
Is that
Uh,
like 20 days?
This is the capital of North Korea. Seoul is actually the capital of South Korea. And this is, this right here, Busan, will take a major, it would be where one of the biggest battles will eventually come into play. Okay? All right, before the war, the Korean Peninsula had been part of Japan. After the war, it was needed to be divided up. The northern half went to the control of the Soviet Union, the southern half went to the United States, and it was divided at the 38th parallel. And I'm sorry to tell you what you know, there is a massive fence, and we're not talking concrete and all that, but it's a fence, guard towers, armed guards on both sides. It's actually there. The South Koreans are there to keep North Korea army from invading. North Korea is actually there to keep their people in. Okay? They're not as worried about South Korea invading them as they are worried about their people trying to escape and get to South Korea.
Do you think they could try to invade them again?
Oh, they have moved, they'll move their military up every now and then and try to flex their muscles a little bit. But no, I don't think they will invade anytime soon.
Would you get caught if you like cross signs? Like if
You can get shot.
There was a thing,
Yeah, you get killed. People are real funny about you crossing fences like that that's designed to keep people in or out. Yes?
Why can't you just go across the peninsula, man? Like, you had 38 parallel on land, but does it go across the water? I mean,
Okay,
that's
yeah.
how patrol boats out there.
No, they do, yeah. You're back again, they, you know, the North Korean, the North Koreans are keeping their people in. Okay, they keep them under control. South Korea, if you're South Korean and you want to go to North Korea, I doubt seriously if anybody would stop you, other than that they're not going to let you go across the fence, but if you wanted to go around, they don't care. If you're that big of an idiot, go ahead.
that's what I was saying on the news, it was just, like, if you're a man in North Korea, you have to be in the military
Oh, yeah.
for like 30 years or something like that.
Yeah, you do have to serve your country, absolutely.
And there was a thing on the news where a soldier got into an army vehicle and ran through the fence, and he got in South Korea.
Well, when I was over there in '78, we had an American lieutenant decided he wanted to chop down a Christmas tree that was on the north side.
Oh,
So he went across and they caught him and beheaded him on the spot.
just,
Yeah, and the United States did nothing because, well, guess what? He wasn't supposed to be there.
it was, the guy was like right at the fence, he had gotten shot.
All right, yeah, stop.
Do we have to take notes for grade fields?
No, you just gotta answer the question. Okay? All right. Eventually, two separate states were formed in North Korea, forming a communist government with Kim Il-sung as leader, and South Korea to form a capitalist government under the Syngman Rhee. The two sides did not get along, and there was constant skirmishes and battles along the border at the 38th parallel. Attempts were being made to negotiate a unified country, but they were going nowhere. Okay? Now, on June 25th, 1950, North Korea invaded South Korea. At this point in time, there's no fencing, okay? The countries are separated. There was still hope that they would be able to unify, okay? But that falls apart on June 25th, 1950. North Korea invades. The South Korean army fled, and forces from the United Nations came to help out. The United States provided the majority of the United Nations forces, and soon the South Korean government only occupied a small part of Korea down on the southern tip. So they had pretty basically pushed South Korea down to the very end of the peninsula. I mean, North Korea had pretty basically taken over the entire country.
That's
at
what
this
that
point.
about now.
Okay? At first, the United Nations was only trying to defend South Korea. However, after the first summer of fighting, President Truman decided to go on the offense. He said the war was now about liberating North Korea from communism. So at first, they were just trying to help get South Korea, their part of the country, back. Then they decide, okay, the heck with this. If we're going to be in a war, we're going to go at it. We're going to win this thing. Okay? All right. In the Battle of Incheon, this is where MacArthur led the UN forces on an attack at the Battle of Incheon. This battle was a success, and MacArthur was able to move in and rout much of the North Korean army. He soon had the retaking control of the city of Seoul, and you remember how close Seoul was to the 38th parallel, and as well as taking South Korea back all the way up to the 38th parallel. Okay? MacArthur continues to be aggressive, and he actually had North Korea pushed all the way to the northern border. However, this is when the Chinese steps in and says, hey, don't be coming into China. Okay? And this is what eventually gets MacArthur fired. Okay? So the Chinese are not happy with this, and they sent their army to enter the war. At this point, President Truman replaces MacArthur with General Matthew Ridgway. There's a whole lot more to it than that, and we'll talk about that a little later on. But MacArthur is throwing out, why don't we just nuke them? Why don't we attack China? He's throwing out all kinds of things that the president is like, shut up. Okay, we're not going to do that. But he's sending a whole lot of different messages to the world, and people are getting very, very anxious about the fact that the leading general is talking about nuking China and North Korea. Okay? Ridgway fortified the border just north of the 38th parallel. Here the two sides would battle for the rest of the war. North Korea would attack the south at various points. The UN army would retaliate, trying to prevent more attacks. One of our sessions that we want to talk about is the never-ending war, because it was just a back and forth battles is all it was. North Korea would overrun the south would push them back, overrun the north, and then Chinese would send in 600,000 troops, and here we go again. Okay, and it's all over the place. Negotiations continued for much of the war, but President Truman did not want to appear weak. And when Eisenhower became president, he was much more willing to offer concessions to end the war. So on July 17th, 1953, a treaty was signed that ended the war. Unfortunately, a few things had changed as a result of the war. Both countries would remain independent, and the border would remain at the 38th parallel. However, between the two countries is a 2-mile demilitarized zone that was placed to act as a buffer in hopes to prevent future wars. So it's not just a fence. You've actually got room in between. It's basically a no man's land. Nobody's supposed to be in there. Okay?
And if you do,
And you have, taking someone who's been there, you've got sniper towers and guard towers and things all over the place. I mean, my whole job was I laid up on a sniper tower for 6 hours a day, waiting to see if somebody was trying to cross the
Did you have anyone try to do it?
Never. Most boring thing I ever did in my life.
Besides.
But you got to look at some beautiful trees across the way.
Yeah.
All right. Facts about North Korea. Although Korea was not strategic to the U.S., they entered the war because they did not want to appear soft on communism. Okay. They also wanted to protect Japan, which did not consider, they did consider strategic. Okay. The TV show MASH was set during the Korean War. And it's actually based on the way that was one of the first wars we did, the mobile army surgical hospital, where they would move front and back all around. Okay, that was it. And then it was very successful, and we used them in Vietnam also. Okay? The situation today in Korea is similar to what it was 50 years ago. Little has changed. It is estimated that around 2.5 million people were killed or wounded during the war. Around 40,000 U.S. soldiers died. The civilian casualty was especially high, with estimates of around 2 million civilians killed. And it is thought that President Truman strongly considered using nuclear weapons during the war. Actually, he fired MacArthur because MacArthur was talking about it.
Isn't that the first war where everybody on both sides had jet-powered fighters?
Yeah, as a matter of fact.
It was
Well,
supposed to be 29.
kind of. Hold up. Bye.